Hurricane Irma update is reaching the Florida, more than 30,000 without power in Miami-Dade. Monroe County evacuates main jail. 10:05 a.m. 460 inmates from Monroe County's main jail on Stock Island were bused to the mainland late Friday night. Though the jail was built to withstand Category 5 winds, Monroe County Sheriff Ramsay made the decision because he said it was too risky with the eye of the storm bearing down so near. They were transported by bus to Palm Beach County. Residents turned away from crowded South Dade shelter. 10:10 a.m. National Guard members and Miami-Dade police had to turn people away from a shelter at South Dade Middle School on Saturday morning. At least 2,500 people were already packed in. The school-turned-shelter went over capacity Friday night, but that didn't stop residents from trying, in vain, to enter Saturday morning. Families lined the school hallways, some resting on blankets and pillows, a lucky few stretched out on air mattresses. In one of the classrooms, a young man had set up a flat-screen TV and was leaning back in what appeared to be a reclining portable chair. The rest of the evacuees were packed in tightly, with little space between blankets. A few families marked off areas using rolling cafeteria benches, coolers, stacks of paper plates and a few stray pairs of shoes dotted a sea of blankets and anxious faces. The hallways still bore their motivational school signs: Accountability Avenue, Take Initiative Interstate, Synergy Street. Young children crowded around laptops, watching cartoons, or played games on their parents' cell phones. Around 8:30 a.m., a school official announced breakfast over the intercom. Kids would go first, then adults, the official said. In the cafeteria, a line of people waited for food. Some families had spilled over from the hallways and set up their sleeping bags and blankets along the cafeteria walls. Children balanced plates with packaged cereal and juice and carried them back to their families' blankets. Evacuees in wheelchairs were served next. Meanwhile, National Guard members guarded the entrances to the school. At the main entrance, a woman approached a Guard member asking where she could get an extra blanket. Her mother didn't have a blanket, she said, and was freezing cold. The Guard member said he didn't have one. Lights started flickering off around 9 a.m. At 10 a.m., a school official came on the loudspeaker to announce a tornado warning and asked everyone who was in the school's interior courtyard to go inside. Miami's iconic Versailles restaurant has closed for Irma. 10:15 a.m. It's too late to grab one last cafecito at famed Miami restaurant Versailles, the beloved hangout of the Cuban exile community. The restaurant said it would stay open as long as weather allowed, but its doors were closed mid-Saturday morning. Florida Turnpike service plazas are closing. 10:20 a.m. As Hurricane Irma churns toward southern Florida, the State Department of Transportation is starting to close service plazas on the turnpike. Just before 10 a.m., the Snapper Creek Service Plaza in Miami was being closed. Plazas in Pompano Beach and West Palm Beach will close at noon, to allow staff to return home before the 3 p.m. local curfew, FDOT said. The remaining service plazas will be closed south to north as conditions worsen, State Director Mike Dew said in a statement. We will close each in time to secure equipment and evacuate our staff prior to the arrival of tropical storm force winds. Those who fled South Florida for Atlanta may not escape Irma. 10:30 a.m. When Alex Maldonado and his family fled Kendall for Atlanta on Thursday before Hurricane Irma's landfall, they packed like they might not see their home again, bringing clothing, jewelry, their toy Maltese Nievs, even a 3x5-foot framed Jose Fernandez signed jersey. But even though Hurricane Irma is now projected to move up along Florida's Gulf Coast with Atlanta in its sights, Maldonado, 22, said his parents and his two teenage brothers are still relieved to be farther north. Right now we're just happy we got out of Kendall. Even if it does get to us, it's probably not going to be as strong, he said. Even if it hits Atlanta as a Cat 4, we're probably going to be alright. Your family went to Atlanta to escape Irma. They may not escape bad weather there. When Alex Maldonado and his family fled Kendall for Atlanta on Thursday before Hurricane Irma's landfall, they packed like they might not see their home again, bringing clothing, jewelry, their toy Maltese Nievs, even a 3x5-foot framed Jose Fernandez signed jersey. But even though Hurricane Irma is now projected to move up along Florida's Gulf Coast with Atlanta in its sights, Maldonado, 22, said his parents and his two teenage brothers are still relieved to be farther north. Right now we're just happy we got out of Kendall. Even if it does get to us, it's probably not going to be as strong, he said. Even if it hits Atlanta as a Cat 4, we're probably going to be alright. Forecasters are still uncertain where Irma will make landfall in Florida, though its current trajectory suggests its center could carry it near Tampa Bay. As the storm moves inland and weakens dramatically, it could still affect a wide band of the South, including Atlanta, with tropical storm winds that could threaten tornadoes. FEMA Administrator William Brock Long warned that Irma would devastate the United States and urged people throughout the Southeast from Alabama to North Carolina to prepare for its landfall. For the Maldonado family, that meant packing their bags and leaving the Kendall home they've lived in since 1999. But making their escape on the road out of the Miami area was a killer, Maldonado said, with hotels booked throughout the state and roads clogged for hours. The typical 10-hour drive to Atlanta from their home stretched to 26 as people farther north of them piled onto the interstate in droves. The family also called 30 different hotels before they found a $120 a night room in Atlanta, Maldonado said. Their hope is to start making the slow drive back through South Carolina toward Miami again when the storm blows through. But Irma's changing path does mean the Maldonados don't know when they'll be able to return home, or what condition it will be in. We're hoping that by Monday night, maybe Tuesday morning, it's safe enough to start heading down, Maldonado said. It doesn't look like that's going to happen if the hurricane keeps moving through the northern part of Florida. Miami has first responders ready to go. 10:40 a.m. At the City of Miami's Emergency Operations Center, located at the Police College in downtown Miami on Northwest 2nd Avenue, dozens of police officers, dispatchers and firefighters took phone calls for service in Drink Cafecito while warily watching Irma. Pete Gomez, the assistant fire chief who oversees the center, said the forecast looks better than a day ago but compared the situation to halftime at a football game. We got to prepare for the second half, he said. The city has crews on standby. An 80-member urban search and rescue team, for which Gomez also runs point, is currently based out of West Coconut Grove. Gomez said responders will stop going out once winds reach 40 or 45 miles per hour. But are otherwise available for emergencies. They'll head out to the rest of the state once they're no longer needed in South Florida, he said. The city has 183 firefighters on standby, a 1,300 police force on rotating 12-hour Alpha Bravo shifts, and cut teams with trucks and high-water vehicles waiting to go out after the storm and clear roadways. We can't let our guard down, Gomez said. Broward will institute 4 p.m. curfew. 10:45 a.m. Broward County will institute a curfew at 4 p.m. Saturday, just when South Florida is expected to start feeling the full force of Hurricane Irma. It will remain in effect until further notice, according to a tweet from the county's Emergency Management Division. There will no curfew in Miami-Dade Saturday night, according to Mayor Carlos Jimenez. More than 30,000 without power in Miami-Dade. 11:00 a.m. 30,010 Florida Power and Light customers are without power in Miami-Dade County Saturday morning, according to FPL's Power Tracker map. In Broward, 4,207 people do not have power. Hurricane Irma's rains and wind gusts have arrived in South Florida, but the storm is projected to grow much worse later in the day. Hurricane Irma is reaching the Florida Keys. 11:10 a.m. Hurricane Irma, one of the most powerful hurricanes on record, is heading for the lower Keys with ferocious strength already kicking up high winds and rising water. Early Saturday, tropical storm force winds had started lashing parts of the islands, pushing storm surge ashore. Water level was up more than 3/4 of a foot in Key West after 10 a.m., and 1.1 feet near Vaca Key. The center of the storm is not expected to pass until Sunday morning, before heading to Florida's Gulf Coast. Where Irma ultimately makes landfall on the mainland remains uncertain because of the storm's angle to the coast, National Hurricane Center forecasters said in their early Saturday update. Lower Key starting to feel Irma's power. Hurricane Irma, one of the most powerful hurricanes on record, is heading for the lower Keys with ferocious strength already kicking up high winds and rising water. Early Saturday, tropical storm force winds had started lashing parts of the islands, pushing storm surge ashore. Water level was up more than 3/4 of a foot in Key West after 10 a.m. and 1.1 feet near Vaca Key. The center of the storm is not expected to pass until Sunday morning, before heading to Florida's Gulf Coast. Where Irma ultimately makes landfall on the mainland remains uncertain because of the storm's angle to the coast, National Hurricane Center forecasters said in their early Saturday update. The storm center could near Tampa Bay, which has not been struck by a major hurricane since October 1921, when the population was about 10,000, said Hurricane Center spokesman Dennis Feltgen. About 4 million people now live in the low-lying area. Big difference, he said. They're incredibly vulnerable. On Sunday, the Keys should brace for a very life-threatening event, hurricane specialist Mike Brennan said, with storm surge capable of reaching 10 feet above ground level. By 10 a.m. Saturday, winds at Molasses Reef off Key Largo had already reached 39 miles per hour, he said. While Miami and the southeast coast have dodged a direct hit, Southeast Florida can also still expect dangerous storm surge as strong winds push water inland and feeder bands drop heavy rain. At 11 a.m. Saturday, Irma was located 175 miles southeast of Key West with sustained winds of 125 miles per hour as it continued to pound Cuba's north coast, forecasters said. Storm bands had already started reaching Miami, with squally rains and winds just after 7 a.m. signaling the storm's astonishing reach. A gust on Virginia Key neared 50 miles per hour, where water was already nearly a foot above normal. Miami International Airport recorded a 55 miles per hour gust. Irma remains massive, with hurricane-strength winds reaching 70 miles from its center and tropical storm force winds extending 195 miles, making it wider than the state. The storm is expected to batter Florida for at least 2 days, Brennan said. The latest forecast track also crosses dangerously close to Captiva and Sanibel in an eerie repeat of 2004's Hurricane Charley. But hurricane wobbles are notorious. Forecast tracks can still be off by about 90 miles at 2 days, Brennan said. Saturday morning, Irma unexpectedly plowed ashore Cuba's north coast, near Ciberian, a village nicknamed the White Town because for beaches that once supported a thriving resort. In 2009, the population was about 38,000. Moving overland will likely weaken winds, but warm waters in the Florida Straits are expected to recharge the hurricane, forecasters said. Because Irma is so big, impacts are expected to be widespread, with dangerous and potentially catastrophic storm surge rolling up and down the Florida coast. Above-ground water levels could reach up to 10 feet along the east coast from Cape Sable to Boca Raton, forecasters said. On the Gulf Coast, where the flat continental shelf worsens the threat, the surge could reach 15 feet from the Cape to Captiva. Flood-prone Tampa could see 3 to 5 feet. Heavy rain could worsen flooding. Up to 15 inches are possible in the Keys, with up to 20 inches in some places. The Florida mainland is expected to get between 8 and 15 inches. The record-breaking hurricane, Irma accumulated more wind energy in 48 hours than any hurricane ever recorded, has been menacing South Florida for days. Track forecasts earlier pointed it to the urban East Coast, home to more than 6 million, triggering frantic preparations. Evacuations were ordered that affected about 680,000 people in Miami-Dade alone. Gas pumps ran dry. Store shelves quickly emptied. As forecasts began shifting west, taking the storm up the center of the state, evacuations increased to eventually cover nearly 20 counties. On its current track, Irma is expected to begin crossing the Florida Straits early Sunday. The center of the track crosses close to Cujo Key, where Hurricane Georges hit in 1998 and delivered a 10 to 12-foot storm surge, cut off water and electricity to the chain of islands, and left the lower Keys a ragged mess. Hurricane and storm surge advisories have been widened in Florida and up the U.S. East Coast. The storm is expected to continue moving west-northwest for the next 12 to 24 hours before making a turn to the northwest Saturday, with another turn to the north-northwest tonight or Sunday. After crossing the Keys, Irma is expected to roll up the coast, Florida traffic slowing down as evacuations progress. 11:15 a.m. Traffic in parts of Florida appeared to be slowing down mid-Saturday morning as more drivers got on the road, causing some areas of congestion. Interstate 75 out of southwest Florida, in particular, could see heavier traffic as the day wears on, due to additional evacuation orders issued for Florida's west coast where Irma is now headed. Some trouble spots at this hour were the Wildwood Interchange, where the Florida Turnpike ends and merges with I-75, a stretch of I-75 near Spring Lake in Hernando County, another stretch of I-75 near Wesley Chapel, and several miles west of Tallahassee on Interstate 10, which runs from Jacksonville west through the Panhandle. Irma's here. But if you're still leaving by car, this is what traffic is like. Florida's main interstates and highways early Saturday were largely seeing free-flowing traffic, in sharp contrast to the past 2 days when thousands of residents fleeing Hurricane Irma were met with frustrating gridlock and hours of delays. As of 9:45 a.m., only a few areas of congestion were reported, a stretch of Interstate 75 near Spring Lake in Hernando County that's backed up because of a crash, and several miles of traffic jams east and west of Tallahassee on Interstate 10, which runs from Jacksonville west through the Panhandle. Both of those interstates are locations state transportation officials say they are keeping a close eye on as Hurricane Irma begins affecting southern Florida and the Keys. I-75 out of southwest Florida, in particular, could see growing congestion as the day wears on, given additional evacuation orders issued for Florida's west coast where Irma is now headed. If you choose to evacuate today, state officials urge safety above all else. Parts of southern Florida were already getting hit by Irma's outer bands. Drivers need to be aware of changing weather conditions, Mike Dew, the state transportation director, told the Herald-Times. They need to be safe. If they do make the decision to leave, make sure to pay attention to roadway conditions. As tropical storm force winds approach, it's going to start to be unsafe out there. So pay very close attention and make sure you have a plan before you leave, he added. Gov. Rick Scott urged West Coast residents seeking to evacuate to do so no later than noon. If you don't need to be on the road, don't be on the road, he said at a mid-morning press conference in Sarasota. Real-time traffic conditions are available at FL511.com, run by the Florida Department of Transportation. One of the largest traffic headaches, even on a good day, has been at the Wildwood Interchange, where the Florida Turnpike ends and merges with Interstate 75. That bottleneck cleared up by around 2 a.m. Saturday, FDOT said, and traffic was running at normal speed. As of mid-morning, if necessary, motorists can still use the left shoulder on I-75 from the Wildwood Interchange to the Georgia line. FDOT and the Florida Highway Patrol began allowing that Thursday evening and all day Friday to help improve traffic flows. Motorists opting to use the shoulder should do so only when directed by law enforcement and highway signs and to use caution and not exceed 40 miles per hour. Driving on the shoulder was still not allowed on any other stretch of roadway, the agencies said. Florida still has no plans to reverse traffic flows on major interstates, which Georgia has done on Interstate 16 from the Savannah west to Dublin. Eastbound lanes of I-16 were reversed Saturday morning to increase the capacity of the roadway to help expedite travel for those leaving Savannah, Georgia's Department of Transportation said in an advisory. Scott told the Herald-Times Saturday morning that the state continues to need southbound lanes of the interstates and turnpike to ferry supplies down to areas in Irma's path. We've got to make sure we have the ability to get emergency vehicles. We're trying to get fuel, we're trying to get food, we're trying to get water down south, he said. We've got to continue to take care of our citizens. Some motorists, however, were critical of the decision, pointing to Georgia. Louisiana, in 2005, also reversed traffic to help evacuees during Hurricane Katrina. Scott said by opening up the I-75 shoulder north of Wildwood, having all 1,700 Florida Highway Patrol troopers on the road, and increasing the number of road rangers to help broken-down vehicles, we are doing everything we can to continue to move the traffic. We know people are going to continue to evacuate, but we've got to take care of trying to get emergency vehicles and all that helps south, and we've got to try to get everybody who wants to go north out, so we're doing everything we can," he said. Motorists looking for places to gas up while evacuating can check Gas Buddy, which offers a tracker on which gas stations have fuel. All service plazas on the turnpike have fuel, according to the Florida Department of Transportation. FDOT said road rangers have seen an uptick in vehicles running low or out of gas, because they were stuck in gridlock. The road rangers have supplied those vehicles with enough fuel so drivers can make it to the next available gas station, officials said. Residents concerned about not being able to evacuate because of fuel issues can call the state transportation hotline at 1-800-955-5504. If your vehicle dies on the road and has to be pulled off to the shoulder, do not leave it. Thursday morning, Florida Highway Patrol began towing cars left disabled or abandoned. Call FHP if you need help. Miami, which was on track for a direct hit from Hurricane Irma, was thrown a lifeline on Saturday as the storm's path veered west. Irma is expected to move up the southwest coast as a Category 4 hurricane on Sunday, bringing with it 130 miles per hour winds and life-threatening rain after battering Cuba on Saturday. It will remain off the coast of Florida until Monday, when meteorologists predict it will then hit Tampa as a Category 3 storm. After the new forecast emerged on Saturday, the mayor of Tampa said ominously, "It's not looking good for us." Miami is still under an evacuation order and officials are warning residents not to return to their homes in light of the news that Irma is moving west because it is still at risk of severe storm surge. Irma is so powerful that no matter where it hits and even before it does, the entire southern section of the state is at risk of storm surge, deadly wind and rain. More than 5 million people have been evacuated in anticipation of it and 50,000 people are in shelters across the state. On Saturday morning, Governor Rick Scott, who has been pleading with residents for days to leave evacuation zones before Irma hits, said, "This is a catastrophic storm. We have never seen this before. The storm is bigger than our state. If you are in an evacuation zone, I hope you leave right this minute," he said from the Sarasota Gov. Scott said he felt the state was prepared, stating confidently, "Everybody is ready but I've got to get people out. This is encompassing our whole state." He said he had called up 7,000 National Guard troops to help deal with the catastrophe. People in Florida are being told to prepare 3 days' worth of food and water to ride out the zone. In the largest evacuation effort in U.S. history, millions of people in the Sunshine State and in parts of Georgia have been told to leave their home before Irma strikes on Sunday afternoon. All of the airports in southeast Florida are now closed and anyone who is still there is being told to leave urgently or take refuge in one of the shelters being set up. In Miami, officials admitted they were rewriting the book as they went along to try to prepare for Irma. Evacuees who have been able to get to a shelter compared the cramped conditions inside to Guantanamo Bay. Some people are being turned away as high schools and other public spaces reach capacity. As of Friday night, only 21 of the 42 planned shelters in Miami-Dade County, which takes in a huge swath of the city, had been announced. The monstrous hurricane has already claimed 24 lives in the Caribbean and wiped out entire small islands. On Saturday morning, it had Cuba in its grip and was pounding the country with torrential rain and winds of up to 130 miles per hour. The largest evacuation in U.S. history is underway as more than 5.6 million people were ordered to leave Florida before Hurricane Irma strikes the Sunshine State. On Friday, Florida's Governor Rick Scott urged people who had not left yet to leave as soon as possible, telling them that any time after midnight on Saturday would be too late. He explained that the biggest concern with the powerful hurricane is the predicted storm surge that will come along with the lashing winds and heavy rains. The storm was downgraded to Category 4 yesterday before being pushed back up to Category 5, but has again been relegated to Category 4 this morning by the National Hurricane Center. Andrew Sussman, the state's hurricane program manager, said the total of those urged to flee Florida includes people throughout the southern half of the state as well as those living in inland Florida and substandard housing. Florida is the nation's third largest state with nearly 21 million people, according to the U.S. Census. Universal Studios joined Disney World, SeaWorld and Legoland and closing as the megastorm heads north. Meteorologists expect the powerful hurricane to hit the state tomorrow. The hurricane is currently raging off the northeastern coast of Cuba, with wind speeds of 160 miles per hour. The outer bands of the hurricane have already reached the U.S., with South Florida and the Keys